If you grew up in the 1970s, you lived through a childhood that doesn't exist anymore, and it built a different kind of mind than the one being built today. We assume more supervision means better outcomes, more rules, more check-ins, an adult somewhere nearby at all times. But your childhood reveals what that assumption leaves out. You had a level of freedom most kids today will never touch, and you carried a level of responsibility most parents today would consider reckless for a 7-year-old. You could vanish after breakfast, turn up again in time for dinner with dirt on your knees, and nobody called anyone to check on you in between. That exact combination is almost impossible to recreate now. It happened to you, and it left something behind that's still running. It usually started with 2 words: I'm bored. And the answer wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning. Go find something to do, or a chore will find you. So you did. You built a fort out of wood nobody gave you permission to use. You invented an entire game out of a stick and a curb. Some afternoons you let yourself into an empty house after school, fished the spare key out from wherever it was hidden, and nobody checked whether you'd started your homework. You already assumed that job was yours. That's not a small habit. Psychologists have a name for the belief that your own actions, not luck or other people, decide what happens next. Locus of control. You never learned the term. You just lived inside it. Every single afternoon nobody was watching. You also got used to being alone without treating it like a problem. No phone buzzing, no feed to check, just you, a bike, or a bedroom ceiling. In one well-known experiment, researchers asked adults to sit alone, with nothing but their own thoughts for 15 minutes. A striking number of them chose to give themselves a mild electric shock instead. The result might sound absurd to you, because long stretches without stimulation were once an ordinary part of childhood. You learned not to treat empty time as an emergency. A friend said something that stuck with you the rest of the day, and there was nobody to unload it on right away. So you sat with it on your bed, radio turned down low, until it passed on its own. Nobody taught you that some feelings could change without being acted on immediately. You just found that out, alone, on a Tuesday night with the ceiling fan going, long before anyone gave it a name. And waiting was built into everything. You waited all week for one television episode, days to find out whether a photograph had turned out, beside a landline hoping the person you called was actually home. Nothing arrived the second you wanted it. Anticipation had room to build. Disappointment had room to settle. And wanting something did not automatically mean getting it now. Nobody called that delayed gratification. It was simply the speed of the world. You also took physical risks nobody would sign off on now. Trees too tall to climb, bikes with no helmet, a plywood ramp somebody's older brother swore was safe. You got hurt sometimes, scraped knees, a rattled wrist, a bruise you couldn't fully explain at dinner. But meeting a manageable risk over and over gives a kid something specific. Practice telling the difference between what only looks dangerous and what actually is. That's a different skill than being fearless. And when you failed, missed the free throw that would have won the game, blanked on your one line in the class play, watched the science fair volcano fizzle into nothing, nobody rushed in to soften it. You felt bad about it in the car on the way home, and then, eventually, you tried again. Nobody called that resilience. It was just Tuesday. Friendship worked the same way, without an adult refereeing every fight. A friend was supposed to show up at the corner store after dinner, and never did. And you had no way to find out if they'd forgotten, or if you'd actually done something to upset them. When 2 friends turned on each other, and you got stuck in the middle, nobody stepped in to mediate. You had to read the room and decide what to do about it yourself, on the spot, with both of them watching your face for a verdict. Growing up without a referee may have forced you to notice things quickly. A tight jaw, a joke that landed wrong, the half-second pause before someone insists they're fine. None of that got taught in a classroom. It got learned on a curb, in real time, with a real cost if you read it wrong. At home, the message was rarely said out loud, but it was everywhere. The chain fell off your bike halfway across town, and you flipped it over and fixed it yourself, hands black with grease, because walking it home wasn't really an option. Something broke in the house, and you didn't wait for someone to notice. You tried first, even on the days you just made it worse. Nobody was coming to rescue a boring Saturday, a snap chain, or a fight with your best friend. Most of the time, the help was you. Nobody sat you down and taught you that. It was just what the house ran on, quietly, every day, until it stopped feeling like a decision at all. That same wiring doesn't always fit the world you're in now. You got used to figuring things out your own way, and a room full of new procedures and approval chains can feel less like structure and more like an insult. You learn to fix things instead of replacing them, so sometimes you keep a broken system running years past when it should have been let go. You built a high tolerance for discomfort, and that same tolerance can make someone else's very real struggle look, to you, like they're making too much of it. You trust what you've lived through, and that trust can make new information feel like a challenge instead of an update. None of that makes you wrong, but the same reaction can come from two very different places. Sometimes it is earned judgment, experience, recognizing a mistake it has already seen before. Sometimes it's an old survival rule still firing long after the environment that required it has changed. Wisdom is knowing which one is speaking. None of this means that childhood was better. It means it was a rare window where freedom and real responsibility showed up in the same house at the same time for the same kid, and gave you practice at things nobody had names for yet. Waiting, improvising, reading a room, failing and trying again anyway. That world is gone, and it isn't coming back. But the reflexes it trained are still there, shaping ordinary decisions long after the childhood that created them disappeared. Drop a comment and tell us, are you a 70s kid? And what's the one thing from that childhood you actually miss? Subscribe to FinalSecond if you want more of the psychology hiding behind the person you already are.